Generals, by and large, are not engaged in petty business. They are focused on their first responsibility, winning wars, and this is demonstrated by the improving quality of PLA training.
但是今天是非常不同的状况，军官比较投入的是在于要赢得战争，然后这个是在于就是训练质量提高方面可以看得出来。
我想知道的是，刚才因为在那个讲座里面好像有讲说，就是如果战争发起的话，就美国会有什么样的措施，会帮台湾，还是说会就是在什么方面去帮助台湾？所以 ，so I'm curious so how will the United States help Taiwan or support like in the military aspect or like help them to resist the PLA to send military or soldiers to Taiwan. So what aspects like that will the United States help? Thank you.
Okay, I do not know America's secret operational plans for assisting Taiwan.
我并不知道美国政府的机密，就是在帮助台湾军事方面的这些机密。
But we are constantly working with the Taiwan military to improve their tactics, to improve their training, and we are constantly suggesting weapons that they should buy.
但是我们一直不断的在与台湾军事一起合作，包括在战略方面和培训方面，还有就是指导他们要买一些什么样的武器。
And it is pretty clear that if China does attack Taiwan, that American forces in Japan will cooperate with Japanese forces to provide many kinds of military support to the Taiwan military.
但是如果中国真的发起对台湾的战争的话，美国在日本的军队会和日本一起为台湾提供军事上的帮助。
It is probably the intention of the Trump administration to build new medium-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles, as it is the already declared intention of the Trump administration to build new tactical nuclear weapons for cruise missiles and probably even ballistic missiles. Today, China has superiority in the number of theater nuclear missiles. But by the end of the second Trump administration, that balance will be much closer.
所以在现任美国政府川普总统的意图是想要建新的中程和中远程的导弹，还有是新的tactical nuclear weapons，
Tactical nuclear weapons.
战术核武器。
But by the second Trump administration, the United States will have many more missiles and new tactical nuclear weapons in Asia to use, if needed, to defeat the Chinese attack against Taiwan.
所以到川普总统第二任期的时候，美国将会有更多的战略和导弹，在亚洲能够战胜 中国。
So, if Trump will not continue his presidency, if it's another one, like Democrats, take over his term, so will this kind of plan continue in the military level?
你再说中文，你再说一遍。
就说如果特朗普不能第二届连任，而是另外一个人，比如说民主党人成为下一届总统，那么美国会不会在这个军事发展计划上继续？
None of the Democrat candidates are viable. There will be a second Trump administration. Yes, sir.
OK， 你帮我翻一下啊。就像你刚才说的，中国政府在决定要跟美国开战之前，他必须要确定他能 survive， 他能存活。这个问题让我感到的是，一旦对台湾发生战争，美国要帮台湾，就是美国跟中国要开战。那么，美国跟中国开战的话，你不是保卫台湾的问题，你必须推翻中国，这个战争才能结束。那么，美国同样要登陆中国大陆才行。那么这个战争，我就觉得可能也很难打。That's my question. OK。
所以你的问题是什么？
很难打。
我的问题就是说，美国会打中国吗
？OK。
你必须要打中国才行。
So, like you said, before Chinese government decides to start a war with Taiwan, it needs to make sure of its own survival. If the United States will support Taiwan in this war, which means that the United States is also in a war with China, which means in order to win the war, United States must invade China and send troops to China, which sounds really difficult. So he wants to know if it's possible and what will United States do.
My point was that if the Chinese government starts a war to take Taiwan, it cannot just fight one war. The Chinese government is going to have to go to war against eventually Japan. It's going to have to impose military control against the South China Sea, and is going to have to eventually become the globally dominant power on Earth, meaning it's going to be fighting many, many wars, not just one war over Taiwan.
如果中国政府对台湾发起战争的话，这就意味着其实中国政府面对的并不是一场战争，而是全球性的很多战争，包括和日本，还有包括要对南海中国南海的控制，所以其实中国在全球范围内，所以这不仅仅是一场战争，其实这意味着中国在全球范围内，要成为主导的力量。
Attacking the United States, yes, does mean there will be a war that will probably only end when the Chinese Communist Party government collapses. Now, we have some experience in doing this that does not require an invasion.
所以美国的加入，还有包括中美之间的战争，就意味着这场战争的结束，是肯定要推翻中国共产党。之前有例子，
有这种经历。
Yes, I'll give
OK，
examples.
所以之前是有例子表明，其实并不需要。
Does not require an invasion of China.
哦 ，OK，并不是必须需要入侵中国。
During the Cold War, we were able to isolate the Soviet Union, deny technology to the Soviet Union, and promote the internal collapse of the Soviet Union. We would seek to do the same thing to the Chinese Communist Party.
在冷战时期，美国孤立前苏联，然后包括在技术方面，就是不给他们封锁技术，这样就导致了他们内部的瓦解和崩溃。Promote internal
Collapse, yeah. Promote the internal collapse of the Chinese Communist Party.
所以美国也可以以同样的方式，最终导致中国内部的瓦解。
中国共产党。
So will Russia join China if this kind of war happens? So 如果这种战争发生了，它是全球性的，那么俄国会不会加入中国？
My estimation is that over the next decade, yes, Russia would join China in such a war against the United States and the West.
在未来的10年当中，我认为俄国的确会加入中国来对抗美国和西方其他的国家。
If the West wins the war, Russia and China may remain friends.
如果西方是赢得这场战争，那俄国和中国可以继续成为朋友。
But there are many Russians who also understand that if the West loses the war, that China will attack Russia in the 2030s or the 2040s.
但是很多俄国人也知道，如果西方输掉这场战争的话，中国会入侵俄国，在2030年或2030年和2040年之间。
So, in the 2030s, the Russians could be running back to the West for protection.
所以如果到时候的话，俄国向到西方寻找帮助。
I have my own questions. I talked to a Chinese veteran who lives in USA now. He said in decades there were some war plan using Vietnam as an imaginary enemy in the commanding level of the Chinese military. Because he worked for he was a soldier, he was a commanding officer in the military for 3 decades.
Right.
He said Vietnam is a true enemy of China, but Taiwan is never a true enemy of China because there's never Taiwan served as an imaginary enemy in the war plan in the commanding level of Chinese army. So do you think?
Well, yes.
So what's your evaluation?
你再说一下中文吧。
So sorry, I have to translate. So 我曾经和一个居住在美国的一个中国退役军官姚成，可能你们知道。他认为中国真正的敌人是越南，他永远的中越之间永远是敌人。在几十年当中，在中国军队的指挥这个层级，一直有那个战争演练的计划， 从来都是把越南作为家乡敌，从来没有台湾是作为家乡敌。所以我想请他评估一下，中国就在越南和台湾之间，到底会把谁作为真正的战争的对象？
Vietnam and China are historic enemies. But since the communist victory in North Vietnam and then South Vietnam, they have been they've been political friends, not quite allies, but political friends, which is why they have not fought another war since the early 1980s. Now, in the case of Taiwan, the political similarities were very narrow, always very narrow, between the relationship between Mao and Chiang Kai-shek. The Chinese communists and the Americans expected that Taiwan would collapse and go back to China after 1979. But it never happened. What happened instead was the creation of an independent, democratic political culture. And every year that it survives, it becomes stronger. So whereas Chinese and Taiwanese might speak almost the same language and have many similarities, and millions of Taiwanese may work in China, in terms of politics, they're very far apart. People on Taiwan want their freedom. They want to be able to determine their own future. And they want the people in China to